It's now time to bring your first feature on the show. Today we are looking at Africa's economic outlook as the sub-Saharan African region is set for yet an uneven economic recovery this year as some countries struggle to bring coronavirus infections under control. Gross domestic product will probably grow between 2.3 and 3.4% this year. That's according to the World Bank, well after contracting by about 2% just last year on stronger agricultural growth and a faster than expected recovery in commodity prices. According to a latest report by the World Bank, Africa's largest economy, Nigeria, Angola, as well as South Africa will be back to positive growth trend this year, while countries like Ivory Coast, Kenya, Botswana and Guinea are also riding on the mineral price wave, which will also be growing way faster this year and come next year. That's 2022. With new infections of COVID-19 weighing on growth projections as daily cases have also been about 40% higher in the second wave, faster progress and vaccine deployment along with credible policies to stimulate private investment, the World Bank says will help accelerate the region's growth. To discuss this and much more, I have joining me now live in our Lagos studio the Vice President of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Gabriel Idalse. Good to have you on the show this afternoon.
Thank you.
Happy Easter. You're still in the mood of the season. Now, let's start first and foremost with a projection. How conservative do you think this is within a margin of 2.3 to 3.4%? For the figures we are having churned out of Nigeria, we're looking at 2% thereabout, but the economy contracted at about 2% just last year. Do you think we're being cautiously optimistic or we're just overly optimistic about any recovery?
No, I think the key word is the caution. There is prospect for much higher growth if certain things go in a certain direction. For example, as we find in Nigeria, if we find the COVID numbers keep going down as fast as they are now, you are going to have more sectors of the economy, from entertainment particularly and social events sectors of the economy, picking up much faster than projected. So it's possible that we could actually see more than 2%. But the downside why we have the cautious optimism in a country like Nigeria is security in vast areas of the country that severely affect agriculture. So we find that agriculture, which is a major part of our gross domestic product, is tempered by the degree by which we can control the security situation. So you find the government trying to say that between now and the onset of the full rainy season, we should try to really bring some control on the level of insecurity in our farming communities. If we get that right, we probably grow beyond 2%. We're probably looking at 2.5. Because the other thing is that as of December, nobody expected oil prices to be where they are today.
Exactly.
So that aspect of the economy, the oil and gas sector of the economy, has exceeded all projections in terms of growth. And what we find around the consuming countries that consume a lot of oil and gas, like Europe and China and America, is that because of the rapid rate of vaccination, the economies in those countries are going to open up much faster.
Mr. Idalse, if I may just butt in here at this point in time, irrespective of the optimism around oil price recovery, the rally we've seen so far, and then on the back of the vaccine rollout, what mistakes do you think we are still making at this point in time that don't necessarily make the best of economic or business sense in today's activities?
Well, if we are talking about Nigeria, the mistakes are not new. The mistakes have always been there. The whole mistakes of how we manage our macroeconomy, because there are sectors of the economy that should grow very fast. Normally, we have agriculture, we have food processing, because adding value to agriculture, it should grow very fast. We have in-country technologies to rapidly grow food processing. We have that capacity. We have some in-country capacity for fabrication of food processing machinery and tools and equipment. But we have not improved that capacity very quickly. We have the financing. Between CBN and BOI, Bank of Agriculture, there is the financing to finance rapid expansion of food processing to the point that we will reduce the import of some food items. But we are not doing that. So that fundamental mistake is still there in not using the capacity to do what can be done quickly. What can take a longer time, the bigger mistake is our long failure to process our oil and gas in country.
Refining. Rather
than just bringing oil from the ground and sending it across the country. So you have short-term mistakes that have been corrected by rapid investment in food processing. You have medium long-term mistakes of still exporting most of our crude and our gas rather than processing them locally, creating massive industries, petrochemical industries out of them, and in fact becoming a net exporter of petrochemical products at least in the West and Central Africa, where we don't have competition.
Now, this leads me to my next question, especially at the back of our minds when we are dealing with the fragility of the Nigerian economy. We have to look at reforms. Like you've rightly mentioned, we cannot just go by the same template and expect a different response. We are dealing with new frontiers as we are speaking right now. But the issue remains that we have limited fiscal support. So that's almost like an uphill for policymakers to have to somersault through. We've seen efforts by the CBN, but that's not necessarily enough. Central banks across the world are looking at 0% interest rates. We are not necessarily able to replicate that model. We are seeing an improved ratio in terms of lending to the real sector of the economy, but that's not still enough of a stimulus or stimulant to catalyze our local production base. So how then now do you expect the economic advisory team of the government now work on new reforms, looking at public debt, looking at our borrowing and repayment plans, and also looking at attracting stronger investment, both local and then foreign investment in country, still taking at the back of our minds that we have insecurity?
Yes, of course. Insecurity is a chicken and egg situation. There's insecurity because there's massive poverty and illiteracy and
unemployment
and limited opportunities. So if you can rapidly grow the economy, you take away about 50% of the cost of insecurity. So the reforms, again, there are no new things in reform that we ought to do that we haven't done. And we can just take areas where we have succeeded. 20 years ago, we issued licenses for telecom companies. As of today, we are not borrowing money from China or India anywhere to grow our telecom industry. The telecom industry is now a source of revenue to federal government. And most states, because of the taxes they pay and the fees they pay to the Nigerian Communications Commission. If you take that same policy reform and move it to rail lines, and if 20 years ago we had issued licenses for private rail line operators around the world who have been itching to enter Nigeria, give them license, build the rails, and run it, the same way the telecom companies are doing that. We have the capacity to do the reform. We haven't done it. And so we are still looking for billions of naira in loans from China or wherever to build rail lines. And we don't need a dime. We don't need to borrow a dime to build rail lines. We don't need to borrow a dime to build deep sea ports, because deep sea ports are commercially viable enterprises anywhere in the world. So we are constrained by heavy borrowing for things that can easily be flipped by simple policy reform. If the government says today we are no more borrowing for railways, we are going to issue licenses. Whoever wants to build railways from point A to B will give you a license. We will negotiate right of way between point A and B, build it and run it.
So if I read your lines of thought properly now, you're saying we have to increase our ratio of domestic saving towards our GDP ratio. Is that it?
You can increase savings from earnings. If you don't earn disposable income above your basic needs, you cannot save. So the first thing is get people who have disposable income, like the telecom operators who came in, and let them pump it into the economy. And say, these countries that have run railway lines for 200 years around the world, 100 years, have the technology, have the money, come and build railways. Create a lot of jobs. Then you will see savings.
Do you think our government at this point in time has the foresight to also look at what sort of investment plans or models that will work for emergent sectors of the economy that we see on the global front and are also happening in country as we speak right now? Looking at ICT, the Internet of Things is changing how recovery processes and how the bounce back really is going to be. You see China leveraging as much as that. You look at India, you look at other African countries. So when we are talking about the conversation about tilting away from oil and gas, Nigeria still has this weird fixation. How critical is it that we have to now look at diversifying this economy? It's already diversified in plain English, but how much of an enlightenment do you think we have to see on the part of government in terms of emergent sectors strategically investing in these areas to have much more earnings?
I think in terms of knowledge, most people in government understand we need to diversify. They understand that we need to open up those sectors of the economy like ICT, but there are cleavages in the government. So you have those people, as you say, who are holding on to the past and believe that you can't just open up the economy overnight. But one thing you can say for this government at this point in time, you have a Minister of Digital Economy and Telecoms that has that foresight that you talked about, because he sees clearly the future economy, which is ICT driven. The top 10 largest companies in the world are now ICT driven. So all the former big companies in the world, the steel companies, the car companies, they've gone down the line. The biggest companies today are the Zooms of this world, Apple, Microsoft. So we have that foresight for this short period. We have a minister who understands it and is doing a lot within that space to open that part of the economy. But we don't have that in several other sectors. And that is the challenge. That when at some point you have someone in a particular sector who understands what to do, the potential of Nigeria blossoms. We had a time, we had a CBN governor who understood the potential of our banking industry and reformed the industry. And now Nigerian banks are present in 25 countries around Africa. It just took someone who had that foresight and the vision.
Let's now also look at outward-oriented trade policies that we also expect to foster faster growth. Now, we also have to look at the fact that Nigeria has to strategically position itself to take the advantages of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. We cannot work in silos anymore. It's time for regional integration, regional growth, but we also have to work on our trade policies. We don't necessarily have the best of blueprints when we talk about synergy, working as hubs, strategically positioning our units, where be it in manufacturing, in whatever sector it may be. We are still not sending the right signals as the giant of Africa. We still have industries not well positioned. Our level of competitiveness, our level of pricing is still not on a good front. What do you think we should be doing right now?
Well, the first thing to say is there's some level of understanding in government that these problems are there. There are clusters of efforts. For example, the Presidential Enabling Business Council is working extremely hard on the ease of doing business. The National Office on Trade Negotiations that is handling AFCFTA is going around the country now sensitizing industries and the economic operators generally as to what we need to do, creating those clusters that you talked about for manufacturing, for fashion, for services in order to go to Africa. Because we have by far the biggest potential beneficiary of AFCFTA. By far. First is geography. We are almost in the middle of the country.
Yeah.
In terms of your local capacity to support an industry to a scale where it can reduce the unit cost of production and now export to other African countries, Nigeria has the highest
I want to take you on that
market.
Word where you say we can reduce the cost-cutting measures. That's the way to go globally at this point in time. But Nigeria cannot necessarily adopt any cost-cutting measure, in my own opinion, because right now we are dealing with very, very heavy inflationary pressures that it's quite difficult for any government across the world to have to deal with. with our current spike in inflation, and we are not seeing any plateau coming in anytime soon, how do you think we can still now nip that in the bud and then bring down the prices of food, of services, and other items that are supposed to help us integrate and then assert ourselves as a continental power?
So the word we use now is can. It can be done. Then the next question is, will it be done? Because the how are essentially available. If you look at the cost of power, you need to build more power, and you need to bring investors to do that, and you need to give them the incentives to do that. We have the capacity to put those policies in place, but we are not putting those policies in place. So the build out of power, new power generating plants is not as fast as we want. And we have a policy now that constrains the capacity of the power industry to grow because the generating part of the sector is privatized. The distribution part of the power sector is privatized. But the transmission that links the generation and distribution is still in the hand of government, with everything that goes with having anything government owned. So the problem is not like in our stars that our cost of power must be high in Nigeria. It is just that we need to understand a serious policy defects at this point and move forward and restructure the ownership of the transmission company. In Nigeria, we mostly talk about privatization and forgetting that really what you are looking at is an ownership structure that makes it efficient, just like the Nigeria LNG. Nigeria LNG is 49% owned by the federal government. It's 51% owned by the IOCs. Because of that 2% difference, they can operate like an international oil company. They can raise all the money they need anywhere in the world, the $7 trillion, for billions of dollars in COVID, because the international community sees Nigeria LNG as an international business because of just 2% difference. So if you take the transmission company today in Nigeria and say, okay, government, we owe 59%. People in transmission business around the world come and take 51%. We have a structure that has been working for us for 20 years. We have it in LNG, it's doing very well. You will see your power, the cost of power coming down because the full structure of a private driven industry will now be at play. Right now, we don't have a full private sector driven power industry because the critical transmission that takes it from the producer of power to the consumer of power is still held under one ministry that runs like any other.
I would want agency. Your final words now as we are gradually wrapping up this conversation. What's your word now to the average investor that looks at the picture we have on ground right now? Yes, we have the optics you can always cash into, but there are the downsides that are really glaring in your face. What's your word to Nigerian investors in playing bigger, a little bigger in terms of their level of participation in the market across the different sectors of the economy? Because if you're looking for the biggest engine of growth, it has to be from local participation. We can't deny that. Your thoughts?
Well, we have always tried, for operators in the economy, we've always made the point that what will attract a local investor will also attract a foreign investor. Because both investors are looking for the same thing, return on investment. So what are the things that will make us grow? First is, for an investor in Nigeria, you have to have grit. You have to be extremely strong. You have to be very willing to take a lot of risks, much more risk absorbing than operating in many other climes. And then you have to be able to navigate all the hurdles of operating in the Nigerian economy, because those hurdles are there. But for those who navigate them, they get excessive returns. And that's why you still have Nigerians investing in Nigeria and, in fact, taking some of the profits to invest outside. So we have to have the grit. We have to have the sustaining capacity to navigate our issues. But every day, some of those issues are being reduced. You find private sector. A few days ago, one of the largest a company involved in a certain industry, in the processing industry, converted its power supply to 100% solar.
That's major.
It's a large, I don't want to mention the name because it's one of the largest businesses in this country. It's now 100% solar power. And you can imagine what savings they are going to make. So to succeed in Nigeria, you have to have a lot of that innovation and imagination to navigate the issues.
And do you still strongly believe in the made in Nigeria goods or services? Do you still think that we have the capacity to make our brands, our services, our products the one, the only to be bought in the market?
Well, it's no longer a belief, it's a matter of experience. Over the last few years, there are many Nigerians who will only wear Italian shoes, for example, but can tell you proudly now that they are wearing shoes made in Nigeria. There are many Nigerians who will never wear Nigerian-made suits because they say, oh, our tailors don't know how to do it. You know, so you go from one product or the other, you find there's a gradual shift. And the interesting thing for people who travel is that you find yourself in Dubai, you walk into a shop, and you find that this thing is actually made in Nigeria. And you find people telling you there that this thing came from Nigeria. But it's a gradual process. The big mentality, the big picture that, oh, foreign and local is still there. But it is the local manufacturing is seeping through. It's getting there. It's no more a surprise now to say this suit is made in Nigeria. It's not something to be ashamed of.
The little wins are worth celebrating, and we believe in the dream Nigeria has, and Nigeria will definitely surmount all of the challenges that we have so far. But at the end of the day, what the average Nigerian wants is that they want a better life. We don't need to see situations whereby we're looking for greener pasture. Home is home, and we have to make it as comfortable as possible, from our services to our products and a whole lot more, to the quality of our leadership. We just have to have better than ever before, most especially at this time, because Nigerians are definitely looking out of the country, and the drain is unbearable for the country. We cannot just continue in that sort of line. Thank you very much for your time on the show today. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, Mr. Gabriel Idahosa, and as a member of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, we acknowledge your work, and we just hope that the interface between small businesses and large corporates as well within the industry will continue to thrive, and then we'll have you back once again to tell us some bigger stories as you've rightly recorded. Thank you once again.
Thank you.